I am glad that we are connected this way through this technology. I'm Rabbi Randy, and we, the rabbinic team of CRC, um, um, are coming to you with messages and with this ritual of counting the Omer. Rabbi Jim and Rabbi Susan started things out, and they will be back. But now I have a few days to join with this kind of virtual community in doing this sacred deed together. So Erev Tov, I hope you're having a good evening so far. Welcome to my office at CRC, which as you can see is very, very busy. But I kind of like to be surrounded by images and the things that I care about and love. So we are here. And as I said, we're counting the Omer, this really incredibly interesting ritual, spiritual practice. This, spoiler alert, I guess, is day 9. And we'll officially together make that count and say the bracha, the blessing for that count in just a little bit. But I did have a few things I wanted to say about counting the Omer, which to me is a really fascinating and important, meaningful ritual or spiritual practice. It really is something that every time it comes around each year, I remember how profound it really is to me. Because what I really think is that the counting the Omer to me is really a great lesson about connections. This counting each day for a span of days is an awesome teaching that that the days don't have to be as sort of isolated and jumbled and random as maybe they seem. That we make meaning, and one of the ways we make meaning is to see how, yes, there's different experiences each day and different accomplishments and different, challenges. Each day is different, but we can sort of impose a trajectory that there is some kind of movement and purpose, not just to each day in itself, but to a string of days. And it kind of helps bring to me that sort of mode of thinking. So what are we connecting through the counting of the Omer? Well, I obviously, the most obvious answer is we're connecting the holiday, the Jewish festival of Passover, with Shavuot, the Jewish day, the Jewish holiday known as Shavuot, or the Festival of Weeks. Shavuot happens on the 50th day after the second day of Passover. There's 49 days of counting, 7 weeks of counting, and obviously 7 is a sacred holy number. So all of this sort of feels very resonant and whole. But yes, it connects, starting with the second day of Passover, that evening of the second Seder. For those that had a second Seder, we start counting each day ritually in the evening time. But in so doing, there's also sort of subcategories once you name that you're connecting Passover to Shavuot, because there's a couple of different purposes for those holidays. One is there's an agricultural sort of meaning behind especially the 3 pilgrimage festivals, starting with Passover in the spring, and then Shavuot in the summer, and then finally Sukkot in the fall. And the agricultural sort of underlay of Passover is planting, because this is the time of planting. And certainly our ancestors were heavily involved in agriculture as their means of feeding themselves and sharing with others, and sort of the way they ordered their lives. And then 50 days later is Shavuot, which is known as the Festival of First Fruits when it comes to its agricultural meaning. The first food that grows as a result of your planting. So there's that connection between the planting and the first growth, the first fruits. But of course, all 3 of the pilgrimage holidays also are very connected with the Torah narrative. And in this case, the Torah narrative of the Jewish, the Hebrew journey from Egypt to the promised land. And Passover, of course, marks that part of the story, which is the Exodus. That's the basis of our Seders, telling the story of going from slavery to freedom. But then Shavuot, its sort of biblical Torah underlay, is about 50 days later, arriving at Mount Sinai. And then there, the story says, receiving the law, the Torah, the Ten Commandments. And so another connection with the Omer is the themes of the holidays, the theme of freedom, Passover, and the theme, I would say, of responsibility for Shavuot, because those Ten Commandments really talk about our ethical obligations to one another. And so there's this linkage, not only between planting and first fruits, first growth, but also between freedom and responsibility. I always say that responsibility without freedom is slavery, but freedom without responsibility is anarchy. And so somehow the connection between those two themes is really important. So it also connects the Omer, the holiday of the season of spring, with the season of summer. And there's so much that happens between spring and summer. And again, it's not random. There's a flow. There's an unfolding to all of that. It connects even ecosystems, right? Because there we are during the counting of the Omer. Our story puts us in the desert, right? We're still in the desert at Shavuot, but all of a sudden there's also mountain and a different kind of a landscape. So it connects deserts and mountains. So it's all about connection to me, all about step by step and unfolding. And hopefully the unfolding is towards growth, towards development. And I guess maybe part of the spiritual practice of counting the Omer helps us realize and see that we can have a positive trajectory, little by little, step by step, and of course, day by day. So that's sort of the way I think about the Omer, and there's a lot of ways to talk about the Omer, and certainly I know that many of us are really intrigued by the Kabbalistic formula of using the Omer as another way of thinking about the Sfirot, those godly emanations and qualities, the midot, the values and the qualities that help us lead a meaningful and purposeful life. And so I will kind of talk about those a little bit before we do the counting, because this week of the counting, the second week, so there's 7 midot, 7 qualities, godly qualities, 7 weeks. That's convenient. And then for each of the week has a named midah, but then each of the day, each of those 7 is laid over the weekly quality, to sort of talk about what is the juxtaposition and what is the balance between all these different qualities. So the quality or the midah of the week is gvura, which is boundary or strength. You could even kind of extrapolate and say discipline. So this day that we're about to count of the Omer, the 9th day, is actually gvura and gvura, right? Strength and strength, discipline and discipline. So definitely we had the first week of Chesed, which is really important. Loving kindness. But it also needs to be balanced. And for this day, we're really emphasizing strength. And I will say this, that in these times, and I don't have to enumerate everything that we're all going through as individuals and families, as communities, as a country, as a Jewish people, as a world community. It's a challenging time. We could use, a double dose of strength. It reminds me of when you finish a book of Torah and there's another synonym for strength, chazak, chazak, this double dose of strength. So I guess that's my blessing, my first blessing for all of you, for all of us, as much strength and courage as we can muster and to give each other on this Gevura day of the Omer. So there's more to come. I'm here for a number of days. I got some things that I would love to share with you. But I always want to end, of course, with the actual counting. And so it's a mitzvah blessing, a Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvotav etzivanu, right? That always ends with the actual action, the mitzvah that you're doing. This action is al sifirat ha-omer, the mitzvah of counting the days of the Omer in between Passover and Shavuot, freedom and responsibility, spring and summer, planting and first fruits, and desert and mountain. And then, of course, I'll announce, and you can say it with me, that it's day 9 of our journey, of our counting day by day. So a deep breath, Nishima Amuka, and once again, I hope you have a good rest of the night as we begin this 9th day with Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu Melech HaOlam, Asher Kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al Sifirat HaOmer. Blessed is the Holy One whose presence fills creation, where we learn these mitzvahs, these sacred deeds that we hope and pray fill our lives with meaning and purpose, dignity, including this mitzvah of counting the days of the Omer, this being day 9 of our counting. Shalom, and I hope it was a good Passover, which really just ended, and Lila Tov.